Distributed Database System, presented by Rupali Banerjee. For proper functioning of any organization, there's need for a well-maintained database. In the recent past, databases used to be centralized in nature. However, with the increase in globalization, organizations tend to be diversified across the globe. They may choose to distribute data over local server instead of a central database. Thus arrived the concept of distributed databases. Today we will going to cover following topics. First, we have to learn what is the disadvantages of centralized database. That's why we have to learn distributed database. So what is centralized database? See, there is one site where our database is. It is centralized database. And there is communication network, and through the communication network, different sites access this centralized database by the communication network. Now, since all data is at this location in centralized database, it takes more time to search and access it because through communication network we have to access centralized database. If the network is slow, this process takes even more time. There is a lot of data access traffic for centralized database. This may create a bottleneck situation. Means every site want to access this centralized database. So this may create bottleneck situation. And the third point is, since all the data is at the same location here, if multiple users try to access it simultaneously, it creates a problem, and this may reduce the efficiency of the system because multiple users want to access this data. If there are no database recovery measures in place and a system failure occurs, now system failure occurs in this site, then we can't get data because no copy is there in any sites. So then all the data in the database will be destroyed. So this is the major disadvantage of centralized database. Our next topic is what is distributed data processing. In case of distributed data processing, there is one centralized database, but that database can be accessed over a computer network by different sites. Here, data is centralized, even though other users may be accessing the data from the other side. That is called distributed data processing. What is DDB? Means distributed database. See, a distributed database is a combination of two contrasting technologies. One is database system, another is computer network. So here there are different sites connected with communication network, but each site has its own database. The distributed database is a collection of multiple logically interrelated databases. So these databases are logically interrelated with each other and distributed over a computer network as if we can think that it is a single database. So this diagram is an example of distributed database system in which communication channel is used to communicate this one, communication network. Communicate with the different location, and every system has its own database. Now, what is DDBMS? Means Distributed Database Management System. It is the software that manages the distributed database, that is DDB, and provides an access mechanism that makes the distribution transparent to the user. Means every user think that database in its own site, that is called transparency. We will learn this term later in our next class. So the term DDBMS and DDBS are often used interchangeably. Take some implicit assumptions. Data stored at a number of sites, each site logically consists of a single processor. Processors at different sites are interconnected by communication network. DDBS is a database, not a collection of files. Placement and query of data is impacted by the access patterns of the user. DDBMS is a collection of DBMSs, not remote file system. Now, think and answer. Is this a figure of DDBS? No. It is a figure of shared memory system. Is this a figure of DDBS? No. It is the figure of shared disk system. See? Secondary storage is shared in different computer systems. Is this a figure of DDBS? No. It is shared nothing system because there is one switch. At a time, one computer system will work. And see the last one. Is this a figure of DDBS? No, it is centralized database. Here it is communication network and database is here only in one site, and every site want to access this database. If any site want to access this database, it will access through communication network. Features of distributed database. Here, databases is a collection of logically related shared data. Often, they represent a single logical database, means one logical database is fragmented and distributed over several sites. Data is physically stored across multiple sites. Data in each site can be managed by a DBMS independent of the other site. So, each site has its own DBMS, it is independent of the other site, and total data is fragmented and distributed over multiple sites. Data in distributed DBMS is split into number of fragments. So, total database, first it is fragmented and distributed over several sites. Fragments can be replicated in distributed system, means one fragment, there may be another copy of the same fragment in another site. That is, replication is also done here. Fragments or replicas allocated to different sites. The processors in the sites are connected via a intercommunication network. Data at each site is under the control of the DBMS. DBMS at each site has its own right, that is, it can handle local application independently, means each site has its own DBMS. Each DBMS is a distributed system must have at least one global application. That is, each site is connected and must have at least one global application. Now we have to learn dates 12 rule for distributed database system. The discussion about DDBMS is incomplete without discussing dates 12 rules. DBMS which follows that rules is purely distributed DBMS. The rules are as follows. First, local autonomy or local site independence. That is, each site has its own operations and also act as independent autonomous centralized DBMS. For security, concurrency control, backup and recovery, there is responsibility of each site. Next rule is central site independence. That is, all the sites are equal and no site is dependent on central site to perform any service. Next, continuous operation. There is no effect of site failure to system. System continue its operation even in case of site failure or any expansion in network. Next, local independence. To retrieve any data in system, there is need to know about the storage of data, that is where the data is stored in system. Fragmentation independence. The user is able to see only one single logical database. There is transparency to data fragmentation to user. To retrieve any fragments of database, there is no need to know about name of the database fragments. Replication independence. Data can be replicated and stored in different sites. The DDBMS manages all fragments transparently to the user. Distributed query independence. To execute single query at different location does not able to satisfy transparent request. So, query optimization is crucial and performed transparently by DDBMS. Distributed transaction independence. Transaction is able to update data at different sites transparently, but control of recovery and concurrency is achieved by using agents. Hardware independence. It should be possible for DDBMS to run on different hardware platforms. Operating system independence. It should be possible for DDBMS to run on different operating system platforms. Network independence. The DDBMS system is able to run on any network platform. And finally, database independence. The system must support any vendor of the database product. So these are question sets comes in your university exam. Try to answer this question, and if you are facing any problem, please feel free to ask any question. Promises of distributed DBMS. First, transparent management of distributed, fragmented and replicated data. Transparent management means every site's user think that the whole database in its own site. The database is actually fragmented, distributed and replicated. It is not known by that particular site users. Improve reliability or availability through distributed transaction. Means here the database is fragmented and replicated and stored in different sites. Because database is replicated and stored in different sites, if any one site failure occurs, then other site user can get the data. So it improves availability and also reliability through distributed transaction. Improve performance. Obviously, performance is improved because it is not centralized. In case of centralized database, bottleneck may occur. But in case of distributed database, because database is distributed and replicated and fragmented, so performance is also increased. And finally, easier and more economical system expansion. In case of if we want to add one more site, we just add one site and add that site to the intercommunication network. In this way, system can easily be expanded. In case of distributed DBMS. Applications of distributed database. For manufacturing companies, especially those companies which have multi-plant manufacturing and have different branch, they are also distributed database is used. For military command and control, because we have to control from different sites, there also distributed database is used. In case of airlines, in case of hotel chain management, that is for any organization which has a decentralized organization structure, their distributed database is used. Advantages and disadvantages of distributed databases. Advantages of distributed database. Modular development means what? If the system needs to be expanded to a new location or new unit. See, this is the figure of distributed database. There are 4 sites connected with communication network. Now, if I want to add one site, okay, if I want to add one site, that is, we want to add a new unit. In case of centralized database system, the action requires substantial effort and disruption of the existing functioning. But in case of distributed system, the work simply requires adding a new computers and a local data to the new site and finally connecting them to the distributed system with no interruption in the current function. Distributed system is more reliable. In case of database failure, the total system in case of centralized database comes to a halt because it is centralized database is in one location, and if the failure occurs in that particular site, then whole system comes to a halt. But in case of distributed system, when one component fails, that is if one site fails, the functioning of the system continues, maybe at a reduced performance. So, distributed database system in this case is more reliable. Better response. In case of distributed database, because the data is distributed in an efficient manner, when the user make one request, that data can be made from local data itself, thus providing faster response. That is no more bottleneck here. So if site 3 trigger one query and that query answer, that is that particular data is stored in the site 3, then no need to search the data through communication network in other site. So here site 3 user can get faster response. So here no more bottleneck occurs. But in case of centralized database, all queries have to pass through the central computer for processing. So in case of centralized database, it increases the response time, because always for a particular site have to search the data through communication network to the centralized database. So here the communication cost is increased. But distributed databases have some disadvantages. They are: first, in case of distributed databases, need more complex and expensive software. That is, distributed database demands complex and often expensive software to provide data transparency and coordination across the several sites. For coordination across the several sites, need more expensive and complex software. And for data transparency, what is data transparency? Data transparency means each user think that the whole database is in its own site. Actually, the whole database is fragmented, distributed, replicated, but it is not known by the user of a particular site. That is called data transparency. Processing overhead. Even simple operation may require a large number of communication and additional calculation to provide uniformity in data across the site. Means if a particular data is updated, then if the replication is available in different sites, then also we have to communicate to that site to update that particular data. Actually, for a simple operation, need more additional calculations and communications to provide uniformity. So this is the disadvantage of distributed database. Data integrity. The need for updating data in multiple sites pose problem of data integrity. Means what? We already know that in case of distributed database, the database is fragmented and replicated in different sites. So replications are there. Now, if I want to update a particular fragment in a particular site, and if the replications are there in different sites, then we have to update those replicated sites also. Why so? To maintain the integrity, to maintain the accuracy, to maintain the consistency, to maintain the validity of data. So, data integrity is difficult to achieve in case of distributed database system. Overheads for improper data distribution means in case of site 3, a particular data is required frequently. Then that data should be stored in site 3 database. But if that data is stored in another site database, then we have to access or fetch the data through communication network. Then response will be slower. So responsiveness of queries is largely dependent upon proper data distribution. Improper data distribution often leads to very slow response to user request. These types of questions comes in your university exam. Try to answer this question, and if you are facing any problem, feel free to ask any question in the comment section. Types of distributed databases. Distributed databases are of two types. One is homogeneous distributed databases, another is heterogeneous distributed databases. Homogeneous distributed database system. In case of homogeneous distributed database system, here database system is a network of two or more databases, but the databases software are same. Means they are same type of DBMS software which can be stored on one or more machines. See, in this case, all sites have same distributed database software, that is Oracle 99. which can be stored on one or more machines. All sites have identical software and share a common global schema. See, because their DBMS software are same, so the schema structure is also same. So, in this system, data can be accessed and modified simultaneously on several databases in the network. Homogeneous distributed systems are easy to handle because all are same DBMS software. For example, consider that we have three departments using Oracle 99 for DBMS. Department 1, 2 and 3. If some changes are made in one department, then it would be updated other department also. There are two types of homogeneous distributed database system. One is autonomous. Here each DBMS works independently, passing back and forth, that is backward and forward, to share data updates. And in case of non-autonomous homogeneous distributed system, a central or master DBMS coordinates databases access and updates across the site. Site autonomy or local autonomy means what? Each server participating in a distributed database is administered independently from all other databases. Means each site has its own database in case of distributed database, and each site database is controlled by that site only. Means there is some local control, that is called site autonomy or local autonomy. So what is the benefit of this? Here local administrator control local data. So the domain of responsibility is smaller and more manageable. Independent failures are less likely to disrupt other nodes of the distributed database, because if one site failure occurs, then it is not disturb the other site. So no single database failure need halt all distributed operations or be a performance bottleneck. Administrator can recover from isolated systems failure independently from all other nodes in the system. So each site has its own administrator. If failure occurs, then that particular site administrator can recover that system, that site independently from all other sites. Because here local autonomy exists, a data dictionary exists for each database. So here no global catalog is necessary to access local data. And finally, because there is local autonomy, so nodes can upgrade software independently from other nodes in the system. Heterogeneous distributed database system. In case of heterogeneous distributed database system, it is a network of two or more databases with different types of DBMS software. See, there is a communication channel and different sites connected with the communication channel, and each site has its own DBMS software. They are different. One site uses MS Access, another site Oracle 9 another site SQL Server 2009, in this way, which can be stored on one or more machines. Different sites can have different schema because software are different, so schema structure is also different, and different software. Because in this system data can be accessible to several databases in the network. So how we can access those data? With the help of generic connectivity like ODBC and GeoDBC. Potentially different DBMS are used at different sites. For example, in the following diagram, different DBMS software are accessible to each other using this generic connectivity like ODBC and JDBC. These are types of question comes in your university exam. Try to answer this question and feel free to ask any question in the comment section. Difference between homogeneous and heterogeneous distributed database system. In case of homogeneous distributed database system, it shares a common global schema. Why so? Because each site uses same DBMS software. In case of heterogeneous, different sites can have different schema because different DBMS software are used in different sites. In case of homogeneous distributed database system, runs identical DBMS software. Here heterogeneous run different DBMS software. In case of homogeneous, each site provides parts of its autonomy in terms of right to change software or schema. But in case of heterogeneous, each site maintains its own right to change the schema or software. In case of homogeneous, same software, so no problem in transaction processing because software is same. In case of Heterogeneous because here different softwares are used, so major problem in transaction processing occurs. In case of homogeneous distributed database system, same schema, so no problem in query processing. But in case of heterogeneous DBMS software, because there are different schema, so problem of query processing may occur. Types of questions comes in your university exam. Try to answer this question and feel free to ask any question if you are facing any problem. Components of distributed DBMS architecture. The contents of a distributed database are spread across multiple locations. Means what? The whole database is fragmented and distributed across multiple locations. That means the contents may be stored in different systems that are located in the same place or geographically far away. However, the database still appears uniform to the users. That is, the fact that the database is stored at multiple locations is transparent to the user. That is, user think that the whole database in its user's own site. That is called transparency. So what are the components of distributed databases? Users. There are many users who use the distributed database. For them, the fact that the database is spread across multiple locations is transparent, and they perceive the database to be one whole construct, and that database is stored in its own site. Global schema. The global schema shows the overall design of the database. It helps to logically understand the design of the whole database, as in reality the database is not stored at one place and it is spread over various systems. Database modules. The database modules are the parts of the database stored in multiple locations. In homogeneous distributed database, all these parts contain the same data model, while in heterogeneous distributed database, the parts may have different data models because for different DBMS softwares are used here. Types of questions comes in your university exam. So this is your homework. Try to answer this question in your comment section. I am waiting for your reply. For getting more and more updates, please like, share and subscribe my channel. That's all for today. Thank you.